Let's talk about BlackBerry. You know, that little device with the keyboard that once completely ruled the world? We're going to dive into the whole story. How a tiny Canadian company built something so powerful and then, just as quickly, watched it all disappear. This is a story about genius, about power, and about the incredible danger of thinking you're invincible.
It's almost hard to believe now, in a world of glass screens, but there was a time when one device was so essential, so all-consuming, that it earned the nickname CrackBerry. And that wasn't a joke. This thing wasn't just a phone, it was a total cultural phenomenon. So, where did this all begin? Well, not in Silicon Valley, that's for sure. It started in a small town, Waterloo, Ontario, with two buddies who had this kind of crazy but brilliant idea. What if you could have your entire work email right in the palm of your hand? What if you could be connected instantly, no matter where you were?
The journey actually starts way back in 1984. Two guys, Mike Lazaridis and Douglas Fregan, start a company called Research in Motion, or RIM. For years, they tinker with wireless tech, and in '96, they released this, the interactive pager, which could actually send and receive emails. But the real moment, the big bang for them, was 1999. That's when the BlackBerry 850 launched, with that keyboard. And that's when things really started to change.
So what was the secret sauce? What made it so special? It was this thing called push email. See, before this, you had to log in, you had to sync your device, you had to actively check for new messages. With the BlackBerry, your email was just there. The second it was sent, it appeared on your screen. For the business world at the time, this wasn't just cool, it was absolute magic. And that one piece of magic, it lit a fire that spread everywhere. This next chapter is where BlackBerry transforms from a clever gadget into a full-blown cultural icon. They built an entire empire on three things: speed, status, and that ridiculously perfect little keyboard. The obsession got so intense that the media actually started calling it the CrackBerry. And think about this, it wasn't just a funny nickname people used, it got so common, so understood, that in 2006, Webster's Dictionary made it official. Your phone's nickname was now in the dictionary. That's how real the addiction was. So what made it so powerful? Well, first, that keyboard. That keyboard. People could type on it with their thumbs faster than on a computer. Then you had the constant, always-on connection to work. But the real killer app, launched in 2005, was BlackBerry Messenger, BBM. This was free, secure, instant messaging with read receipts. It was iMessage or WhatsApp, but years earlier. And on top of all that, having one made you look important. It was the ultimate status symbol. And all that addiction, it led to absolute total domination. Just look at that number. At its highest point, BlackBerry wasn't just a player in the market, it was the market. It controlled almost half of the entire US smartphone industry. They were an unstoppable giant. And this just perfectly captures how essential it was. When Barack Obama was elected president, his security team told him he had to give up his personal phone. It was a security risk. And his famous reply, "I'm not letting you take my BlackBerry." The single most powerful person on the planet flat out refused to give his up. That's how deep it went. So BlackBerry is sitting on top of the world. They seem completely untouchable. But then, a day comes along that can only be described as a seismic event for the entire tech industry. January 9th, 2007. Right. On a stage in San Francisco, Steve Jobs walks out and shows the world the iPhone. And it just shattered all the rules. The one thing that BlackBerry believed was absolutely non-negotiable, a physical keyboard, was gone. It was just this beautiful, giant slab of glass. So, how did the kings of the smartphone world react to this? Well, they laughed. Seriously. The story goes that RIM's executives watched the announcement and were just completely dismissive. To them, this was a toy, a consumer gadget. They were the serious company for serious people. And they were utterly convinced that no real professional would ever want to type on a screen. And this really gets to the heart of the matter. It was a total clash of philosophies. BlackBerry was focused on making the perfect tool for business and email. Apple wanted to put the entire, vibrant, chaotic internet in your pocket. BlackBerry's strength was the keyboard. Apple's was the touchscreen. And maybe even more important, the App Store, a concept that BlackBerry just had no answer for. And what happens next is maybe the most tragic part of the whole story. It wasn't like a switch was flipped. It was a slow, agonizing collapse, and it was fueled by denial. The giant just refused to accept that its world was ending. So instead of adapting, what did RIM do? They doubled down. They just kept focusing on making better keyboards.
Their first real attempt at a touchscreen, the BlackBerry Storm in 2008, was an absolute disaster. It had this weird, clickable screen that just felt awful to use, and all the while they just didn't get the App Store. They couldn't get developers on board, so their app ecosystem was a ghost town.
And the results? Well, they were brutal. Remember that nearly 50% market share we saw? It just vanished. By 2010, only 3 years after the iPhone came out, both Apple and Google's Android had not only caught up, they were surging past BlackBerry. The change happened at a terrifying speed.
From there, the fall was basically a straight line down. Their money peaked in 2011 and then just fell off a cliff. The founders, the co-CEOs, they were forced out in 2012. They tried one last big relaunch with BlackBerry 10 in 2013, but it was too little, way too late. And then finally, in 2022, they switched off the old servers. BlackBerry was, for all intents and purposes, officially dead.
So what's the point of all this? What do we take away? The story of BlackBerry has become the ultimate cautionary tale in technology. It's packed with lessons about innovation, about pride, and about what happens when you fail to see the future coming. And here's the most important lesson of all. BlackBerry devices weren't bad, they were amazing for the world they were designed for. Their failure wasn't a failure of engineering, it was a failure of imagination. They kept perfecting a product for a world that was quickly ceasing to exist.
So when you really boil it all down, these were the fatal mistakes. They thought their success today meant they would be successful forever. They completely misunderstood and underestimated what Apple was trying to do. They listened to their corporate clients who loved what they already had, and they ignored the millions of new customers who wanted something different. And they believed their secret sauce, that keyboard and security, would be enough. But it wasn't.
And that kind of leaves us with one last, nagging thought. BlackBerry's story feels like it's ancient history, right? But these patterns, they repeat themselves. So the question to ask yourself is this. When you look at the biggest, most dominant tech companies today, which one is making the BlackBerry mistake right now? Which one is on top of the world, totally convinced they're invincible, while missing the earthquake that's about to change everything?